I'm Samson Pharaoh. Coming up on today's show, we have a look at recent advancements in the fashion industry. We have a discussion in the world of graphic novels with writer-journalist Paul Gravett, an insight into a macabre alternative to life drawing, and a performance from cabaret duo Bourgeois and Maurice. But to open the show, here are the Trumpet Creepers with an excerpt from their new contemporary piece based on the story of Theseus and the Minotaur. And don't worry, the performance starts in silence. The Trumpet Creepers there. You can see them performing at the King and the Minotaur Labyrinth Gallery in King's Cross from tonight. But now, time to take a look at the technical side of the fashion industry and gain an insight into some of the recent advancements in the links between science and the arts.
With fast development in the human technologies, people are no longer satisfied simply by the appearance of clothes. Helen Storey, the ex-commercial fashion designer, has now accomplished to make the perfect transform by inventing her first dissolvable dress in the world.
So the Wonderland project was a project with Professor Tony Ryan from the University of Sheffield, and we were actually trying to find a way of looking at packaging that could disappear. So it started off as a packaging project, but we realised in order to be able to do the science, we were going to have to use another cultural form. So we decided to work with dresses, and I suggested that we made a collection that would disappear instead. In some ways it was a sort of anti-fashion project, because it was actually about asking people to think about why we make the things we make and how we get rid of them, or how they have a second or third life. So it wasn't supposed to be about clothes that we'd necessarily buy, so much as a sort of metaphor, if you like, for a bigger problem than all of us, which is around sustainability in the environment.
As a great fan of science herself, she started her own Fashion and Science Foundation in 1996, supporting the ideas that may change the world.
Helen Story Foundation was set up in order that I could work closely with science, but not have to necessarily worry about producing anything commercial. Certainly in the world of research, there's quite a few people beginning to work much closer with science. At Central St Martin's there's a girl, for example, who's working on growing her own clothes. There are other people looking at how you can embed technology into clothing. I think the fashion industry in the next 20 to 30 years is going to have to entirely reinvent itself. I think we've now come to the edge of being able to produce things just because we think they're beautiful. They've now got to have an added purpose and a second life to them. Otherwise, we'll continue to be part of the problem rather than the solution.
And I'll say so. With me now is fashion student Sabine Klassen to give her take on the topics raised by Helen's story and further insight into the world of fashion. Hello, Sabine.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
What inspired you to study fashion?
When I was younger, I used to steal the dresses of my mother and used to wear them, but obviously they were way too big. So
Right.
I then came up with the idea of designing my own dresses in the future.
Mm-hmm. What other new inventions in fashion science have you heard about when you studied in university?
Apart from the Wonderland collection, I think the bioculture is a really interesting thing, where you have clothes that are environmental friendly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is a really good new invention. And then we have the spray-on cloths, which I think is also a really cool new thing.
Spray-on, wow.
Yeah, where you can do your own clothes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What new textile do you want to use in your next collection the most?
For me, it's really important to use the most environmental friendly, nature friendly textiles as well. Yeah, so I think that will be one of my focuses. And yeah, I could also think of the spray-on cloth. Yeah, I think that would also be really nice too. Yeah.
What do you think of those different researches? Do you think that they're really that necessary?
I think the researchers are really essential for the whole fashion industry, to contribute to the global warming issue and to help preventing this, and to concern on environmental friendly clothes. Yeah.
What is your opinion on the future of fashion for the next 20 years?
Yeah, I hope, as I said, I hope that it will be going into this direction, and that people can also design their own clothes. I think is a really good new innovation, but of course I would maybe lose my job if everybody could design their own clothes. So I hope that I can do new innovations as well and work with a lot of scientists to create new inventions that you can maybe see in 20 years or something.
Wow, definitely forward-looking.
Yeah.
No worries. Well, thank you for talking to us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Now, with the recent success of The Walking Dead and Kick-Ass, are graphic novels becoming even more popular, or are they still considered a geek's medium? We went to investigate.
The current popularity of comic books and graphic novels is on the increase following the success of film adaptations like Sin City, V for Vendetta, and recent The Walking Dead. So has the transfer from mediums led to the geeky stereotype associated with comics being left behind?
I think it is justified in some ways, with the idea of some teens, mainly boys, being kind of rooted indoors, like flipping through comic books, kind of like they're in their own little world, and they don't get enough time, out with real people.
Definitely do, but it's a good stereotype. It's not a bad thing. People, like to think it's kind of nerdy, but it's not. It's good fun.
Comic books and graphic novels provide a distinctive blend of unique artistic ability with creative narrative. Some argue this is lost in the transfer to film.
I think that the films based on the comic books, they aren't as good as the comic books, and I think most fans would agree. I think with the recent films like Spider-Man 1, that's really good, and that portrays like a fun view of Spider-Man like he was originally in the comics. But I think with Dark Knight Returns, the new film, it's a really good film, but it doesn't capture the classic essence of Batman, such as Tim Burton's Batman did.
I think a lot of the more recent films have definitely done very good justice. You know, Iron Man is a prime example. You know, that was beautifully done, and things like 300 and Watchmen as well are some of the best adaptations. They look exactly like the comic book.
The glamorization of comic books in the form of Hollywood blockbusters has led to their integration in pop culture all over the world.
I think that television and movie adaptations appeal more to people than comic books because they reach a wider audience, and because millions of people go to the cinema and millions of people can watch TV every day.
It's a lot more accessible for people. You know, there isn't a comic shop in every town to start with. You know, it's much easier for people just to sit back on their sofas or in a cinema and just absorb the information.
So has the geeky stereotype associated with comics been lost in the appeal of these films?
I think they come with a stigma that if you read them, you're a nerd or you're a geek as well. Whereas a massive big blockbuster film is being advertised in a way that you're cool if you go see it.
Comic books and graphic novels have come a long way over the past few decades, both in terms of content and public reception.
They've changed because they've grown up with the customer base. So in the 60s, you know, when comics were starting to boom, they were for a younger sort of 10-year-old age group, and then as the years have gone by, they've grown up with the customers. So they're now a lot more sort of dark and gritty, like, you know, so it's a less Batman Camp Crusader and more Dark Knight is a good example. A lot of comic books are heading towards online. A lot more people are, you know, you can buy comics online, download them to your iPad, read them that way, or even onto your iPhone. So, you know, there are a few comic shops closing down, but, you know, people will always want the pamphlets and the books. You know, people still collect vinyl records, so I don't think it will ever really die.
It seems that the rise in popularity of film adaptations has led to a rethink of the associated stereotypes, showing you really shouldn't judge a book by its cover.